next one is Peter Grosskopf. He is the founder, co-founder and CTO from Unstoppable Finance. He has a bank background and he knows both sides, the technology one and the entrepreneurial one. He was at solarisBank. He was at the Börse Stuttgart, the first digital exchange, as a regulated digital exchange in Germany. Very exciting what he will tell us to get the ultimate money. Here is Peter Grosskopf. There he is. Hi.
Hey. All right. Wow, it's amazing to be here. So I think, I don't know when I've been the last time at the DMEXCO. So pleasure to be here and to speak. And it's also cool that today we have the stage here to talk about Web3, blockchain, DeFi, and all the new stuff which is coming up. And I'm speaking about DeFi, so decentralized finance, and the future of banking. I was already introduced, but I also introduced myself again. So I'm Peter. I'm originally also from the Rhine area here. So it's also cool to see a few friends here. So I'm a developer from my origins. Started with a software development company in the early days. Moved to Berlin 8 years ago and somehow slipped into the finance space. So I always say, if you play with the wrong kids on the schoolyard, suddenly new things happen. And so this brought me into the finance space. I was able to be one of the co-founders of solarisBank. Kind of joined as one of the first 5 people in the company, and we built up a bank. Came into the crypto space end of 2016. Also really thinking about, so if people can have the bank in their pocket by owning a non-custodial wallet, so what happens with banks, and what happens to the financial service companies. And I wanted to work full-time in crypto. That brought me to Börse Stuttgart. And now we started with Unstoppable Finance, a new company a year ago. And we want to bring DeFi to the masses. And what DeFi is, I'm going to explain in the next minutes. So why we are all here? So we all know in the meanwhile that the invention of the internet has been one of the most disruptional events in the past decades. Kind of almost, it changed a lot of industries and a lot of companies. And with Web3 and with blockchain, we're now facing a comparable situation again, which is very likely also changing a lot of industries. And so the internet is also called the Internet of Information. So it's about kind of displaying information, building applications. But with blockchain and with Web3, we're now able to also have the Internet of values, which means that you can transfer value from one person to another and have like a full infrastructure for that. Also, when talking in the comparison or about the comparison of the internet and now the blockchain era, so in HTTP, so in the kind of internet protocol, there's also one there's one standard included, which is about payment, which has never been implemented anywhere. And now with the Internet of Value, we're now seeing kind of the implementation for transferring value through the internet. So as this is an online marketing conference, and it's likely that there are some people in the audience who don't know much about blockchain and what it actually is. So I want to give a definition about it. So I'm a developer, so for me it's a decentralized database of transactions. And so what's so new about it? So you have to imagine. So if you're running in your company a database, it's in the data center. You have the data under your control. It's kind of the full governance is under your control. In the blockchain, it's a little bit different because the nodes of the database are maintained by people that you don't know. So which means, so if you want to trust the data that are in this database, you have to trust these people that you don't know. And that's kind of the twist, the twist here. And blockchain in the end is like a mix of mathematics, of technology, cryptography, and also game theory to incentivize these maintainers of the nodes in a way that they don't change the data, that they don't manipulate, and in the end you can trust the whole system. And So the Bitcoin kicked this development off, and with Ethereum, we now have a blockchain for quite a few years where you also can build applications on top. With the relation to finance, most banks run the core banking systems, which is kind of the account keeping system where all the people and customers have their accounts. The blockchain is kind of a global core banking system which is not controlled by anyone, where everybody can create an account without an intermediary, so without a bank. And if people can now use this global database and build applications on top, so for example in the financial services, that's really it's really groundbreaking, because also in the financial service you never had a global infrastructure before, and now you can really make transactions and build applications that run globally and are fully standardized, and everyone can access them. But so now talking about Web3, the vision is actually much bigger, and so for me it's also not only a technology introduction, it's really a paradigm shift that might also disrupt a lot of Web2 companies, and maybe also a few companies that are here in the advertising space, because also just comparing the few versions of the web. So when the web was invented, it was meant for like a means of information, so mostly from the academic space, and people wanted to kind of download information and share data across the globe, and it was really fully decentralized, because the idea of the internet was also to be kind of like a resistant to a nuclear war. So that kind of, as it's decentralized, there are many nodes and servers running it. So if there would be like a nuclear explosion somewhere, so the internet would still survive. With the Web 2 kind of popping up over the past 10-15 years, the internet came a little bit more centralized, because mostly Web 2 companies like Facebook, Google are kind of the gateway for us. So we're able to create identities and the login, and we're using these platforms. These platforms collect a lot of data about us and monetize the data with advertising. And with Web3, we're now kind of facing a new development where potentially the internet becomes more decentralized again, because potentially with Web3 technology, the users are also able to monetize their data themselves. And as we are on an advertising conference here, just to give you one example, let's assume there's a website owner and having traffic data, and like in the traditional sense, you would make a cooperation with like an advertising company, and this advertising company would monetize that data and find kind of the right people to feel attracted from the website. And in the Web3 idea, you could, for example, have an oracle, so which is like a service exporting the data from the service, publishing it to a decentralized marketplace, and the bidding and finding the advertisers could happen on this decentralized marketplace as well. So therefore, and in the end, it's fully automated. It's a global infrastructure. It's definitely still in its infancy. So kind of the scalability is maybe a little bit lacking, so that real-time bidding is not possible yet. But people are working on making blockchains more and more performant. So I'm pretty optimistic that also the advertising space will get a new wave of disruption over the next 5 to 10 years. So we all know this quote, "Software is eating the world," from Andreessen Horowitz. And 11 years later, we've seen how Amazon revolutionized the retail business and how Spotify revolutionized the music industry. In the end, everything became better, faster, more usable, and more digital. But also, having worked in the financial services space for quite a while now, from my perspective, the only industry that did not change much is the financial services and banking industry. And how does it look today? I don't want to go into too much detail, but for me, there's like one thing really remarkable. So I think every one of us is using WhatsApp for more than 10 years already. And so we are used to have real-time information, kind of sending messages to people, and the data arrives in real time. But when it comes to banking, we kind of real-time transactions are still not the default. So even in many banks, you have to pay extra for making a real-time payment. And so this, to me, really shows how slow the space moves. Also, many banks have been surprised when the fintech movement came up, because the idea of the fintechs was to provide financial services in a better, more usable, and more customer-centric way. But I think that the banks have always been too slow to really react and find their own solutions, so that they started to partner with fintechs, and there's just a few banks really able to be really digital. And furthermore, we've seen all the scandals happening. So I think the Wirecard scandal is known to every one of us, Cum-Ex as well. And I think the problem is, as long as there's people working in banks and potentially also criminals working in banks, like in the case of Wirecard, it's very difficult to come up with regulation and with rules to really find them. And from my point of view, what I'm talking about today is also a solution to really build a much better financial service system, also with less manipulation. So when talking about blockchains, there have been, from my point of view, two waves that we've seen so far. So maybe let's start with phase zero. Blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain was the first blockchain that went public. The idea was to run a decentralized peer-to-peer payment system, which has no intermediary, kind of like as the access control. But what happened afterwards? People figured out that the Bitcoin price was rising all the time, and there were a few new cryptocurrencies that have seen the same development. So people wanted to trade it, and that's, to me, the first wave of crypto, where it's about crypto assets, about cryptocurrency, and trading them on exchanges. And in the meanwhile, we see a lot of companies, for example, Coinbase, Kraken, but also the Börse Stuttgart projects, where it's like centralized companies. It works almost like a bank or like a stock exchange, and people sign up there and are able to trade cryptocurrencies. Furthermore, you can use tokenization, which means that you can kind of create assets on the blockchain that you then can transfer through the blockchain. These assets can also have a relation to real-world assets. I think this wave is almost maturing. So a few weeks ago or a few months ago, we've seen the MiCA regulation being introduced, which is the idea to have a unified Europe-wide regulation for all of these centralized services that people can use. To me, it's an interesting development. But so what I'm really curious and interested about is the second wave of crypto, where it's not about trading crypto assets, where it's more about consuming financial services. And that's a huge difference, because imagine that you can kind of consume financial services, which is everything that you get from a bank, for example, a loan, earning interest rates, having an asset manager, but also marketplaces and exchanges. Imagine that you can use these kind of services and consume them from non-banks. And in the end, that's now what happens with DeFi. So what's DeFi actually? Decentralized Finance. So my definition is that it's financial services offered through smart contracts on the blockchain. What's so cool about it? It's permissionless, so there's no gatekeeper, there's no bouncer like in Berghain, so who selects who can go in and who might not go in. So everyone can use it globally. It's highly interoperable. The banking industry really took years to introduce the PSD2, so which is like an open banking standard, so that banks have to provide APIs, so that, for example, fintechs can use these APIs to build financial services on top. In DeFi, you kind of have this by design. So because the smart contract is, in the end, a public endpoint, a public API, so that everyone can use. And we see in DeFi that many projects are using each other For example, lending protocol is using a decentralized exchange for liquidations, and it's 100% automated and integrated without kind of promoting these standards. Furthermore, it's super transparent, so the transactions are transparent to everyone, to auditors, and also the source code is available and displayable for everyone. So auditors can have a look and make sure that these services are built the right way. And also speaking about regulation and also the traditional finance space, what I like about DeFi is that once you wrote a smart contract and it's kind of deployed, so installed on the blockchain, then you can't change it anymore. And so from my point of view, it's solving the dilemma of regulators worldwide, because most of the scandals that we've seen, for example, Wirecard, have been caused by people, so by humans, doing manipulation in the background, and it's very difficult to detect them. And imagine if financial services are 100% offered by machines. The machine always does what's written in the code and follows the rules and doesn't have an interest to manipulate. And therefore, from my point of view, it's really a solution to solve the dilemma of the regulators worldwide. So I think I already talked about what you can get from DeFi. So it's exchanges, it's payment systems, it's asset managers. So almost anything that you get from a bank, you can also get in the DeFi space. And how do you get access? In the end, you need to open or you need to create a non-custodial wallet. So which means you create a private key that gives you access to your account on the blockchain. And then kind of the world is completely open for you. And so why do I believe that non-custodial wallets are so important? In the end, they will become the super apps of tomorrow, because so this idea of having a private key and signing transactions can be used for logins, for digital identities, and various services also beyond the financial space. And that's also the reason why we, with Ultimate, so the company that I founded, are creating a non-custodial wallet, which makes it very easy to invest into DeFi. And so with this wallet, we want to bring DeFi to the masses. So I'm a little bit late. So my final thoughts. So maybe a few things to remember. DeFi to me is kind of fintech 2.0, because the fintechs, when they started, they wanted to disrupt the banks, but in the end, they didn't, because they ended up with corporations. And with DeFi, we are now building the full stack, kind of the whole infrastructure of financial services and the transactional layer completely from the scratch, and potentially also without banks and any intermediaries. So therefore, it's a groundbreaking innovation. DeFi scales massively because, as I said, if you run, for example, an exchange, it's just code. It's a machine delivering it. In the end, you only need developers who are developing them. And there you see a comparison here of the New York Stock Exchange and Uniswap, which are kind of in the same business. And the revenue per employee in DeFi is much higher, and because it's 100% automized. Yeah, and to conclude, maybe you got a glimpse. So why I'm so motivated to be a builder in this space. So due to this, the properties of being permissionless, so open to everyone. It's a global infrastructure. It's 100% automized, and people are building with a massive speed. And I really believe that with the components that we're already seeing in DeFi, it's possible to build the best financial service and banking ecosystem in the human history. And that's why we're doing it. Thank you for listening. So if you want to know more about us, so you can definitely follow us on Twitter. You can also follow me on Twitter and add me on LinkedIn. So if you have questions, so we're really happy to promote for the space and help people to get started. So if you have questions, you can definitely talk to me or contact me on these channels. Thank you.